I gave my daughter the beautiful home my late husband and I built, the home that held 40 years of our love. But when his laughter echoed from my living room, I, Evelyn Thorne, was exiled to my own cold garage. What my son-in-law Marcus didn't know was that I was about to call someone who could unravel his entire world. The garage door groaned open, spitting a blast of icy March air that clawed at my cardigan. I fumbled for the light, illuminating my bedroom. A cot jammed between dusty boxes and a rusted lawnmower. This was my reward. Just 50 feet away, my beautiful home glowed, Marcus's laughter drifting through the night. I was Evelyn Thorne, 68, exiled to my own garage, while the man who promised to care for my daughter entertained guests in my living room. "You're welcome to join us, Mom," Clara had offered, avoiding my eyes. "But Marcus thinks it might be awkward. His colleagues, you know. An image. I never planned to live with my daughter and son-in-law. After Arthur passed 5 years ago, I cherished our family home. A sprawling colonial we built ourselves. It embodied 40 years of love, hard work, and my secret acumen behind Thorne construction. Every detail, from the hidden reading nook to custom wainscoting, held our history. Clara, our only child, was his world. His dying wish was for her security. So when Marcus Sterling, Clara's fiancé, hinted at living in our house, I saw through the manipulation. But grief blurred my judgment. I'd always had reservations about Marcus. His charm was too polished. His smile never reached his eyes. Arthur, ever the optimist, dismissed my concerns. Yet his family's firm, Sterling and Associates, seemed impeccable. I promised Arthur I'd ensure Clara had everything. 3 months after the funeral, I handed Clara the deed, believing my sacrifice fulfilled his wish. Her joy sealed it. What no one knew, not even Beatrice, my closest friend, was that the house wasn't my only asset. Arthur and I had diversified wisely. A secluded cabin in the Adirondacks, offshore accounts, silent partnerships. After Arthur's death, I quietly sold Thorne Construction for a sum that would make Marcus's eyes bulge. I kept these details to myself. A smart woman always has a backup plan. Arthur often winked. It was a secret we shared, a fortress against the unforeseen. The house dynamics shifted subtly. Marcus reorganized the kitchen, moving my heirloom dishes out of reach. Clara apologized, suggesting I avoid the main entrance when they had company. Marcus's colleagues, an image, she'd murmur, my value diminishing, my expertise ignored. I'd run a multi-million-dollar company, but now I was incompatible with their polished facade. Then came the remodeling. Without consultation, Marcus hired contractors to gut the master suite, Arthur's and my bedroom. Custom cabinetry, handcrafted by Arthur, ripped out, updating to reflect their lifestyle, the project manager explained. I confronted Clara. He wanted to surprise me. She sighed, avoiding my gaze. The house needs a modern touch. Cohesive, I thought, feeling like a ghost in my own home. Arthur's reading nook, gone. Hand-painted tiles, replaced. Each change erased a piece of him, and with it, a piece of me. Beatrice saw it. "Evie, this isn't right. That's your home." But I'd signed away my rights. What could I do without straining things further with Clara? The final straw. 6 months after the deed transfer, I returned from visiting my sister to find my belongings moved to the detached garage. A hasty conversion. A cot, space heater, a tiny sink, and toilet. Clara met me, guilt mixing with defiance. "Marcus's parents are staying for a month. They need the guest suite." "A month? In November? In this?" I stared at the meager space. Where was I in this planning? Clara averted her eyes. Marcus thought it easier to present the solution. How considerate, I'd managed, my heart roaring. That night, on the squeaky cot, Clara's laughter echoing, I faced the truth. She wouldn't stand up for me. Marcus's hold was stronger. I was utterly alone. Weeks stretched to months. Marcus's guests rotated through my former suite. Winter deepened. My space heater fought a losing battle with the cold. A persistent cough became pneumonia, prompting Beatrice to take me to Dr. Chen. "Unsuitable living arrangement for your age, Mrs. Thorne," he warned. Beatrice drove me back, fuming. "This ends today. I'll tell that entitled young man a piece of my mind." I stopped her. "No, Beatrice. This is between me and my family." "What family?" she snapped. "A daughter who lets her mother sleep in a garage? A son-in-law who treats you like an inconvenience?" "Evie, that's emotional abuse." The word hung, a stark revelation. I, Evelyn Thorne, former CEO, relegated to a garage. How? That evening, I knocked on my own front door, waiting like a stranger. Clara answered, half blocking the view of Marcus and clients at my dining room table. "Mum, we're in dinner. I need to speak with you both. Now." My voice carried. Clara's eyes darted nervously. Marcus appeared, his perfect smile unwavering. "Evelyn, we have guests. This can wait." "No," I stated, my voice clear for the curious couple. "I'm Evelyn Thorne. This was my home before I gave it to my daughter. Now I sleep in the garage while my son-in-law entertains here." "Enjoy your dinner?" The woman gasped. Marcus's smile fractured. "Evelyn, that's enough. You're embarrassing, Clara." I turned to my daughter. "Am I embarrassing you, Clara? Or is it embarrassing that your mother has a respiratory infection from sleeping in a garage while you host dinner parties?" Her face crumpled, then hardened. "You're being dramatic, Mum. The garage is adequate. If you're unhappy, consider other options." Her words struck me like a physical blow. My own daughter was telling me to leave. "I see," I said quietly. "I believe I will consider other options." My heart broke with each step back to the garage. Marcus's voice followed. "My mother-in-law is struggling with change. The elderly, you know. 68. Not elderly. I built a legacy that gave him this roof. Inside the garage, I made my decision. Arthur's wish was for Clara's security, not my humiliation. He would never have wanted his wife exiled, his memory erased, his daughter so transformed." I scrolled to Frederick Hayes's name, Arthur's former partner, my trusted friend. He knew all Thorne Construction's assets, the ones off the official books. My finger hovered. This call was irreversible. The compliant mother would vanish. Marcus's laughter echoed from the house. I looked at Arthur's photo, holding baby Clara. "I tried, Art, but it's time for Plan B." I pressed call. "Frederick, I need your help. It's time to execute the contingency plan." A chuckle. "I was wondering when you'd call. Arthur always said you'd wait too long. What did that son-in-law of yours do?" As I spoke, a monumental weight lifted. The path was clear. Evelyn Thorne was done with garages. It was time to remind everyone who I was and what happened to those who underestimated me. Have you ever felt that quiet endurance shatter into a burning need for justice, realizing the fight isn't just for yourself, but for the very memory of who you were? Frederick arrived in Maplewood, his presence a solid anchor in my stormy world. We met at the Green Street Cafe, far from Clara and Marcus's prying eyes. He embraced me, then held me at arm's length, his face darkening at my gaunt appearance. "Good Lord, Evie, you've lost weight." Arthur would be turning in his grave. I waved away his concern. "Garage living isn't a spa, Fred. But I'll be fine." "You shouldn't have been in a garage," he retorted, controlled anger in his voice. The cafe's quiet hum contrasted with my turmoil. Frederick slid a thick manila envelope across the table. "Documents. Everything's in order. Deeds, statements, Horizon Holdings papers. Horizon Holdings, our secret LLC. Years ago, Arthur and I quietly funneled properties and investments into it, tracing back to a trust only I controlled. Clara and Marcus had no idea." "The cabin?" I asked. Frederick smiled. "Still beautiful, owned by Horizon. And the liquid assets? $42 million only you can access. Arthur made sure." I took a sharp breath, hope surging. Why wait so long, Evie? Living like a pauper worth millions? Pride, stubbornness, love for Clara. I wanted to give Clara a chance. Thought she'd remember us. I didn't want to believe she'd choose Marcus over me. Frederick's hand covered mine. She made her choice. Now, yours. We spent hours on options. The house was Clara's, unchangeable. But everything else, assets Marcus never knew existed, was mine. First, Frederick insisted, out of that garage. You're coming to my hotel. I shook my head. Not yet. If I leave, Marcus wins. He wants me gone. I need to be strategic. Frederick raised an eyebrow. Something in mind? Yes. Marcus's persona was illusion, built on his family's struggling firm. He needed wealth's appearance for clients. I want to shatter that illusion. Disrupt his image. Frederick's slow smile spread. Precisely. But first, information. Marcus's firm, Sterling and Associates, is unstable. Lost major clients. I need to know why. I suspect he inherited his father's talent for cutting corners. Frederick chuckled. Still the strategist, Evie. Learned from the best, I replied, thinking of Arthur. Our plan formed. Frederick would discreetly investigate Sterling and Associates. I would maintain my garage exile, playing the defeated mother-in-law, gathering internal information. That night, returning to the cold garage, a new fire burned. The game had begun. Marcus had no idea he played against a hidden queen. And as the darkness wrapped around me, the cold seeping in, I wondered if he would ever truly comprehend the silent force of a mother's hidden strength, finally unleashed. The silence of the garage swallowed me whole. But the fire of resolve burned hotter than any space heater. Marcus's BMW was gone. Clara was alone in the kitchen, wiping down the already spotless countertop. She looked up, her expression guarded. "Mom, about last night?" She began, her voice small. "It's all right." I interrupted, my tone mild. "I understand you were put in a difficult position." Relief washed over her face, quickly followed by guilt. "The garage really isn't suitable," she admitted. "I've talked to Marcus about converting the basement into an apartment for you. It would be warmer." "That's thoughtful," I replied, allowing a deliberate cough. Though Dr. Chen said I need to avoid damp spaces. Clara bit her lip. "Dad made sure the basement is dry when he built the house. Remember his French drainage system?" A genuine smile flickered, and for a moment I saw my Clara again. "Have you heard from Marcus's parents lately?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. Clara tensed. "They're in Palm Beach." "Why?" "Charles mentioned some firm changes. Just curious how that was going." "What changes?" Her voice sharpened with unease. I shrugged. "Restructuring. Nothing important, I'm sure." Clara turned away. Marcus, who'd boasted of involving her in everything, apparently had limits to their partnership. I stood, feigning tiredness. I should get back to the garage. Clara's eyes flickered with worry. "Mum, are you okay? You look pale." "Just the infection. Maybe assisted living?" she suggested tentatively. "Somewhere with proper medical supervision?" I hid my smirk. "Expensive. Marcus knows a nice facility in Westvale," she offered. "Clean and well managed. Cheap," I thought. "I'll consider it. Though I'm not sure what I'd use for payment. The house was my main asset, and Social Security barely covers my meds. A blatant lie, of course. Arthur and I had substantial hidden savings. We could help," she offered, without conviction. "Marcus and I..." "No, you two are just starting out. I wouldn't want to be a burden." I paused at the door. "Clara, are you happy?" The question caught her off guard. "Of course. Why ask? You seem different. Less like yourself and more like..." Penelope. Colour drained from her face. Clara had always detested her mother-in-law's cold perfectionism. "That's ridiculous. I'm nothing like her." "I hope not," I said, opening the door, "because Penelope would ship her mother off to a cut-rate nursing home without a second thought. I always believed you had more of your father in you than that." I left her, mouth slightly open. It was a calculated risk. I needed to plant seeds of doubt. The Clara I'd raised was still there, buried beneath Marcus's influence. Back in the garage, I reviewed Frederick's documents. The Adirondacks cabin, a secluded 3-bedroom on 5 acres, was ready. Horizon Holdings, our secret entity, owned it, stocked with untouched millions. Arthur had truly prepared for everything. I was the sole managing member, full authority. Most compelling was a folder, Sterling Financial, preliminary. Frederick's investigation into Charles Sterling's firm had begun. Nothing concrete, but patterns emerged. Suddenly, withdrawn complaints, secret settlements, former employees who refused references. My phone buzzed. A text from Frederick. "Dinner tomorrow? Found something interesting?" My reply was simple. Yes. Adrenaline surged. Marcus Sterling had no idea what was coming. Can a daughter truly escape the shadow of her husband's making? Or are some transformations too deep to undo? The next evening, I told Clara I was having dinner with Beatrice, then met Frederick at an upscale restaurant in a town over. He was already seated, nursing a scotch, a self-satisfied glint in his keen blue eyes. "You're going to enjoy this," he said, a low rumble of triumph in his voice as I took my seat. I made contact with a former employee of Sterling Financial, a junior advisor named Olivia Kahn. Left the firm about 8 months ago under mysterious circumstances, and she was willing to talk. I raised an eyebrow. Not at first, I imagine. Precisely. But when I mentioned I was representing a potential investor concerned about ethics, she agreed to meet. Frederick slid his phone across the table, displaying a photo of a professional-looking Asian woman in her mid-40s. "She's sharp, Evie. Top of her class at Wharton. Impeccable credentials. Sterling recruited her heavily, then sidelined her when she started asking questions." "Questions about what?" I prompted, leaning forward. "Client accounts, specifically. Discrepancies in reported returns versus actual performance. She suspected someone was manipulating the numbers to keep clients happy while skimming from the accounts." My blood ran cold. Securities fraud, potentially. She couldn't prove anything. Sterling keeps their systems locked down tight, but she saw enough to make her uncomfortable. When she raised concerns to Charles, he dismissed her. When she went to Marcus, he had her terminated the next day. Did she report it? She filed a complaint with the Securities and Exchange Commission, but without solid evidence, they couldn't pursue it. She's been blacklisted from most firms in the area. Sterling made sure of that. She's working as a financial consultant for small businesses now, barely making ends meet. I digested this chilling information. A rising tide of anger began to push against the cold fear in my stomach. Would she be willing to meet with me? She's cautious, but yes. I told her you might have resources that could help her case. She's meeting us for coffee tomorrow. We ordered dinner, and I filled Frederick in on my strained conversation with Clara, the one where I'd tried to plant seeds of doubt. He nodded approvingly. "You're driving a wedge between her and Marcus. Good strategy." "I'm trying to remind her of who she was before him," I corrected. "My daughter was never cruel or materialistic. This version of Clara is Marcus's creation," Frederick stated. "Or perhaps it's who she always was, and you just didn't want to see it?" His voice was gentle, but his words stung. "You didn't know her growing up. She was kind, Frederick. Thoughtful. Arthur and I raised her to value people over things. People change, Evie. Sometimes for the worse." He pushed his food around his plate. My appetite had vanished. "Not Clara. Not completely," I insisted, refusing to believe that. Frederick didn't argue, but his silence spoke volumes. We moved on to practical matters. Finding me a proper place to live, accessing the funds I'd need to execute my plan, establishing a timeline for action. "The most important thing," he emphasized, his voice lowering, "is maintaining the element of surprise. The moment Marcus realizes you have resources he doesn't know about, he'll start counter-moving. He won't find out until I'm ready," I assured him. "Right now, he sees me as a helpless old woman he can bully into leaving. That perception is my greatest advantage." After dinner, Frederick drove me back to the house, stopping a block away at my request. "Are you sure you don't want to come to the hotel? I have a suite with an extra bedroom. You'd be comfortable there." "Not yet," I said. "I need to be here a little longer. Trust me, Frederick." He sighed, the sound laced with a concern that tightened my chest. "I do trust you. It's that son-in-law of yours I'm worried about. Men like Marcus are dangerous when cornered." "I'll be careful," I promised, then made my way back to the garage in the biting darkness. My mind raced with plans. If Marcus Sterling was engaged in financial fraud, I needed proof. Not just to protect myself, but to save my daughter from a man who would sacrifice her future for his own gain. And perhaps, in the process, I might be able to help others like Olivia, others who had been hurt by his predatory greed. As the cold seeped through the garage walls once more, I wondered if this quiet return to the shadows was my final retreat, or merely the silent calm before the storm I was about to unleash. The next morning, a note taped to the garage door jolted me. "Mum, going to look at that facility in Westvale with Marcus. Back by dinner." They were already shopping for nursing homes, moving faster than I'd anticipated. I needed to accelerate my own plans. I spent the morning on my laptop, researching Connecticut's financial regulations and documentation requirements for investment advisors. By noon, I had a solid grasp of where Sterling and Associates might be vulnerable if they were indeed manipulating client accounts. At 1 o'clock, I met Frederick and Olivia Kahn at a quiet cafe in Hartford. Olivia was exactly as her photo suggested: polished, professional, with an intensity in her dark eyes that spoke of fierce determination. "Mrs. Thorne," she greeted me, her voice steady. "Frederick explained your situation. I'm truly sorry about your daughter and son-in-law. Please call me Evelyn, and I appreciate your willingness to meet with us." We settled into a booth at the back of the cafe, and Olivia got straight to the point. "I need to be clear. I have suspicions, but no concrete proof of wrongdoing at Sterling Financial. Everything I saw could potentially be explained as administrative errors or aggressive but legal investment strategies." "But you don't believe that's the case?" I prompted. "No, I don't. The patterns were too consistent. Large accounts showing artificially inflated returns on paper, while the actual holdings didn't match the reporting. Clients being shifted between advisors whenever they started asking detailed questions. And there was a separate, password-protected client list that only Charles and Marcus could access." Frederick leaned forward. "VIP clients?" Olivia nodded. "That's what they called them. But these weren't necessarily the wealthiest clients or the oldest accounts. Some were relatively new, with modest portfolios. The common denominator seemed to be that they rarely checked their statements in detail." "Elderly clients?" I suggested, a cold knot tightening in my stomach. "People who trusted their advisor implicitly?" "Exactly. Many were retirees who had handed over their life savings to Sterling. Several were widows." Her eyes met mine, a silent understanding passing between us. Women who had recently lost their husbands and had limited financial experience. My stomach churned. It was a predatory pattern, targeting the vulnerable. If Marcus had looked at me as a potential mark before learning I'd signed over the house to Clara, the thought made me feel ill. "What exactly are you hoping to find, Evelyn?" Olivia asked, her gaze unwavering. "Leverage," I answered honestly. "My son-in-law is trying to force me out of my daughter's life. If he's engaged in financial misconduct, I want to know about it, to report him if necessary. My preference would be to convince him to back off without involving the authorities. I don't want to see my daughter hurt by a public scandal." Olivia considered this, a flicker of empathy in her eyes. "I understand your position, but these aren't just numbers on a page. These are real people's life savings. If Sterling Financial is defrauding clients, they deserve to be stopped. And they will be," I assured her. "One way or another. But I need evidence first. Could you identify which clients might have been victimized?" She hesitated. "I don't have access to their systems anymore. And even when I worked there, the VIP list was restricted. But you remember some names? A few, she confessed. There was one woman I was particularly concerned about. Margaret Winters. She invested her entire inheritance with Sterling about 2 years ago, roughly $1.2 million. Her quarterly statements showed consistent 8 to 10% returns, which is unusually high for the conservative portfolio she requested. But when I accidentally accessed her actual holdings during a system glitch, the numbers didn't add up. I took out a small notebook and wrote down the name, Margaret Winters. Anyone else? Olivia provided 3 more names, along with what she could remember about their accounts. It wasn't much, but it was a start. There's something else, she added, her voice dropping. There was an internal audit scheduled about a month before I left. Standard procedure, usually routine, but Marcus and Charles were unusually tense. They had us working late for weeks, cleaning up the files, as they called it. After hours, when they thought everyone had gone home, I saw them in Charles's office with stacks of documents. They were shredding things. Frederick and I exchanged glances. Document destruction ahead of an audit was a major red flag. Do you know which firm conducted the audit? I asked. Peton Associates. They've been Sterling's auditors for years. I always thought it was odd. Most firms rotate auditors regularly to ensure objectivity. Another note for my book. Olivia, would you be willing to go on record with this information if it became necessary? She took a deep breath. If you find actual evidence of fraud, yes, but not based on suspicions alone. I've already been blacklisted in this industry. I can't afford to be labeled a whistleblower without proof. Fair enough. I agreed. For now, let's keep this conversation between us. But I may need to contact you again as this develops. After Olivia left, Frederick and I remained at the table, processing what we'd learned. It's circumstantial, he acknowledged, but compelling. If Marcus and his father are running some sort of Ponzi-esque or skimming from accounts, they've put themselves in a vulnerable position. And they've hurt people in the process, I added, thinking of Margaret Winters and the other names on my list. I need to see those client files. Breaking into Sterling Financial isn't an option, Evelyn. No, but approaching these clients might be. If they're willing to share their statements and account details, we might spot the discrepancies Olivia mentioned. It's risky. If Marcus finds out you're questioning his clients, he won't... I checked my watch. I should get back before Clara and Marcus return from their nursing home tour. Frederick insisted on driving me, still uncomfortable with my garage accommodations. As we pulled up a block from the house, he handed me a key card. Room 412 at the Maplewood Inn. It's reserved in my name for the next month. Use it whenever you need a break from that garage. I slipped the card into my pocket. Thank you, Frederick, for everything. Arthur would be proud of you, Evie. Standing your ground, protecting what matters. I smiled, though tears pricked at my eyes. What matters is setting things right. Not just for me, but for Clara too. She deserves better than a husband who preys on the vulnerable. And if she doesn't see it that way, if she chooses him despite knowing the truth, it was the question I'd been avoiding, then at least I'll have tried. I owe Arthur that much. I walked back to the garage, my mind racing with plans. If Marcus Sterling was engaged in financial fraud, I needed irrefutable proof, not just to protect myself, but to save my daughter from a man who would sacrifice her future for his own gain. And perhaps, in the process, I might be able to help Margaret Winters and others like her recover what was rightfully theirs. As I approached the property, I noticed Marcus's car was already in the driveway. They'd returned earlier than expected. Through the kitchen window, I could see Clara and Marcus in what appeared to be a heated discussion. Clara's arms were crossed defensively, while Marcus loomed over her, his face tight with anger. I slowed my pace, watching. Whatever they were arguing about, it was serious. Clara shook her head emphatically, then turned away. Marcus grabbed her arm, spinning her back to face him. Even from this distance, I could see the flash of fear across my daughter's face. My blood ran cold. In that horrifying moment, the pieces clicked into place. Clara's increasing isolation, her subtle flinches when Marcus moved too quickly, the careful way she monitored his moods. This wasn't just about control or money. My daughter was afraid of her husband. I'd been approaching this as a battle of wits, a strategic game to outmaneuver Marcus. But now I understood. The stakes were far higher than I'd realized. This wasn't just about reclaiming my dignity or exposing financial misconduct. It was about saving my daughter from a man who might be dangerous. I retreated to the shadows of the garden shed, pulling out my phone to text Frederick. Need to move faster. Clara may be in danger. His reply came seconds later. Coming back. Be there in 20. Don't confront him. I tucked the phone away, my heart pounding. 20 minutes felt like an eternity with my daughter inside that house. Through the window, I could see Marcus gesturing angrily, his face contorted. Clara had backed against the counter, making herself smaller. I had no proof he'd ever physically hurt her, but emotional abuse was often the precursor to violence. I couldn't wait for Frederick. I needed to interrupt whatever was happening in that kitchen. Taking a deep breath, I straightened my shoulders and walked purposefully toward the back door. Evelyn Thorne had spent enough time hiding in garages. It was time to step back into the light and into the fight for my daughter's future. But would my sudden presence escalate Marcus's rage? Or could it truly be the turning point Clara desperately needed? I rapped sharply on the back door, not waiting for an invitation before turning the handle. The argument inside stopped abruptly as I stepped into the kitchen. Marcus's expression shifted instantly, rage dissolving into practiced charm. "Evelyn?" he smoothly offered. "We were just discussing the Westvale facility. Private rooms, medical staff on call. I think you'd be comfortable there." Clara quickly wiped her eyes. "Mum? I thought you were out with Beatrice?" "Plans changed," I replied, facing Marcus directly. "Is everything all right?" I could hear raised voices from the driveway. "Just a small disagreement about finances," Marcus dismissed. "Nothing for you to worry about." "Really?" Because it looked rather intense from where I was standing. Marcus's smile tightened. "Were you spying on us, Evelyn?" "Observing," I corrected. "Just as there's a difference between a disagreement and whatever I just witnessed." Clara stepped between us, hands fluttering nervously. "It's nothing, Mum. Marcus is just stressed about work. The audit is coming up. An audit, just as Olivia had mentioned." "Actually," I said, moving to the refrigerator, "I'd be happy to help if you're preparing for an audit. I managed Thorne Construction's books for 30 years. Numbers are kind of my specialty." Marcus laughed, hollow and condescending. "That's very kind, Evelyn, but Sterling and Associates is several magnitudes more complex. We have certified accountants for that sort of thing." I pulled out soup, keeping my expression neutral. "Of course, just offering. Though Arthur and I did manage a multimillion-dollar business across 3 states. Not quite as provincial as you might think." Clara glanced at Marcus, defiance flickering. "Dad's company was really successful, Marcus. They built half the commercial properties in the county, and yet they sold it off rather than expanding," he replied. "A lack of vision, perhaps, if only he knew our strategic timing." "Different priorities?" I said mildly. "Arthur valued family over empire building." Marcus checked his watch, feigning impatience. "Speaking of priorities, I have calls to make. Clara, we'll continue our discussion later." A subtle, unmistakable threat. Clara's shoulders tensed as he left the room. She exhaled shakily. "Mum, you shouldn't antagonize him. He's under a lot of pressure." I chose my words carefully. "What kind of pressure exactly?" Clara busied herself at the counter. "Just work stuff. Markets volatile? Clients nervous? Is that why you were arguing? About client concerns?" Her hand stilled. "Not exactly." She lowered her voice, glancing at Marcus's office. "He wants to use the house as collateral for a business loan. I told him I wasn't comfortable. My house, the home Arthur built, her security, now a gamble. Why does he need a loan?" I asked, holding my anger. "Short-term cash flow, to cover withdrawals while waiting for investments to mature." She hesitated, But it's a lot of money, Mum, and the house would be the only collateral. Red flags waved. Classic Ponzi scheme. How much money are we talking about? Clara bit her lip. 2 million. I nearly dropped my soup. 2 million, Clara. That's not cash flow. That's a catastrophe. You'd lose the house. Marcus says it's safe. Investments mature next quarter. It's temporary. Have you seen documentation of these investments? I pressed. Confirmation they exist and will mature? Of course they exist. She snapped, defensive. Marcus wouldn't lie. I'm not suggesting he would. I lied. But it's a significant risk. Verify the details. Basic due diligence. Clara's loyalty wavered. Marcus handles finances. He knows what he's doing. Then he should have no problem showing you the paperwork. Ask for specifics. The door swung open. Marcus reappeared, his smile tight. Everything okay in here? Clara straightened, her doubt hidden. Fine. Mom was having soup. Wonderful. His gaze flicked to me. I've spoken with Whispering Pines. Opening next week for your mother? Private bath? Within our budget? That seems awfully rushed, I commented. I haven't toured it. They'll arrange a visit tomorrow. Spaces fill quickly, so we need a deposit. He turned to Clara. I told them we'd bring a check in the morning. Clara looked uncertain. Shouldn't we discuss this with Mom first? Look at more options? Marcus's smile didn't falter, but his eyes were cold. We've looked at 3, darling, and given your mother's health, the garage isn't suitable. Unless you'd prefer she move into the guest suite again. The question was loaded. Clara looked apologetic. The deposit makes sense. We can get it back, right? Of course, Marcus assured her. A lie I instantly knew. I stood, gathering my dignity. I appreciate your concern, Marcus. But I'm not ready. I'd like to explore my options. His expression hardened. Options require resources, Evelyn. Resources you don't have. Clara and I are being generous. But our patience and finances have limits. The doorbell rang. Marcus frowned. Are we expecting someone? I'll get it, Clara said, relieved. A moment later, Frederick's booming voice carried from the entryway. There she is! Clara, my dear, you're looking more like your mother every day. I suppressed a smile. Frederick had arrived, right on cue. As Frederick stepped into the kitchen, his jovial performance a stark contrast to the seething tension. I wondered if this unexpected arrival would truly disrupt Marcus's carefully laid plans, or simply set the stage for an even more desperate play. Frederick, in full performance mode, boomed into the kitchen. There she is! Clara, my dear, looking more like your mother every day. He embraced me, then Marcus, a grip both jovial and firm. Marcus's confusion was evident. He clearly didn't remember Frederick. Mr. Hayes, Arthur's old partner, he mumbled, trying to place him. Good to see you again, son. Still keeping the financial world turning? Frederick's arm draped over Marcus's shoulder. I'm in town. Had to check on Evelyn. Marcus's discomfort grew. Not at all, though we were in a family discussion. About my living arrangements, I supplied, meeting Marcus's gaze. They think I should move to an assisted living facility. Frederick's performance slipped, genuine outrage breaking through. Assisted living. At your age, Evelyn. You're more vibrant than half the 60-year-olds I know. Mum's been sick, Clara interjected. The garage isn't insulated. The garage? Frederick interrupted, aghast. You're living in the garage, Evelyn. That won't do at all. He turned to Marcus, his voice hardening. Surely a man of your means can find better accommodations for his mother-in-law? Arthur Thorne would be appalled. Marcus bristled. We've offered alternatives. Evelyn has been resistant. Resistant to being shipped off to a nursing home, perhaps. Frederick countered. What about an apartment, or converting part of this enormous house? Not financially viable at the moment, Marcus stiffly replied, looking around the expensively renovated kitchen. Really? Frederick's eyes twinkled. Forgive an old man's impertinence, but you seem to be doing quite well for yourselves. Custom cabinetry, high-end appliances. Arthur would be impressed by the upgrades. Marcus's expression darkened. Our financial situation is private. And frankly, none of your business. Absolutely right, Frederick said, mock surrendering. Just concerned for Evelyn. She's like family. Clara, ever the peacemaker, jumped in. We're concerned too. That's why we're looking at assisted living. Frederick looked at me, genuine worry on his face. Health issues, Evelyn? You didn't mention serious concerns. Respiratory infection, I explained. From the garage conditions. Frederick's jaw tightened. He pulled out a business card. Evelyn, why not join me for dinner tomorrow? We can catch up properly. He turned to Marcus and Clara. You're both welcome too, of course. Marcus opened his mouth to refuse, but Clara spoke first. That would be lovely, Mr. Hayes. What time? 7. The hotel restaurant is quite good. Perfect. We'll be there. After Frederick left, Marcus rounded on Clara. Why did you accept that invitation? We have the charity gala tomorrow night. That's not until 9. We can do both. Besides, Mr. Hayes is Dad's old friend. Marcus's jaw tightened. Your friend seems quite concerned. Perhaps he'd like to contribute to your care expenses, since he finds our solutions so inadequate. His words were both insulting and revealing. Frederick is being polite. He has his own family. Convenient, Marcus snorted. Everyone has opinions, but no one offers actual help. I don't need help, I replied evenly. I need respect. My name was on the deed to the garage you've relegated me to. I built this house with Arthur. I have a right to be treated with dignity. Your name was on the deed, Marcus corrected, his voice sharp. You signed it over. Legally, this property belongs to Clara now. Marcus, stop, Clara pleaded. Does she, Clara? Marcus challenged. Because she seems to have forgotten her generous gesture came with practical limitations. We can't afford to maintain this house and finance a separate apartment for her. Assisted living is the reasonable compromise. I sat down, my soup bowl forgotten. I think I'll return to my garage accommodations now. Thank you for the soup, Clara. Mum, wait, Clara began, but Marcus cut her off. Let her go. She needs time to consider the Westvale option rationally. I walked out with my head high, refusing Marcus the satisfaction of seeing me upset. Back in the garage, I texted Frederick. Thank you for the interruption. Things are worse than I thought. His reply was immediate. Agreed. That man is a snake. Dinner tomorrow is set. I've also made contact with Margaret Winters. She's agreed to meet us the day after. Progress. If Margaret could provide her statements, we might have the evidence needed. But first, another night in the garage. And tomorrow's dinner. A dinner that could change everything. Will this carefully orchestrated dinner reveal the secrets Marcus so desperately hides? Or will his cunning prove too much for even our unexpected ally? The morning after our dinner, Marcus's confident facade crumbled. Frederick and I had unveiled his deceptions, linking his firm to a vast criminal enterprise. Clara's world visibly shattered, reeling from the shocking truths of his fraud and cruel intentions for my life. Her raw pain confirmed the heavy cost of her awakening. She sought refuge at Frederick's hotel. I, pushing the investigation, used Arthur's evidence and Olivia's testimony. The FBI, already monitoring Sterling and Associates, moved swiftly. Months later, the courtroom buzzed. Marcus, ever manipulative, blamed his father, but the paper trail, witnesses, and undeniable truth of his crimes led to one outcome. The jury foreman's words echoed, each guilty verdict a hammer blow, dismantling his empire. He was led away, his world in ruins. Outside, under the Connecticut sky, I breathed deeply. 18 months in protective custody reshaped me, yet here, home, Evelyn Thorne returned. Clara, transformed, rushed into my arms. Her eyes held new strength. We faced the storm, survived the betrayal, and emerged whole. We tore down the garage, Clara said, pulling me back to the house. In its place, a new foundation lay ready. My own private space, connected by a breezeway. Independence with proximity? Isn't that what you always wanted? Tears blurred my vision. It's perfect, sweetheart. The house, Arthur's legacy, was ours again. The deed, in both our names, equal partners, no more imbalance. Justice served, legacy reclaimed. Arthur would have been proud. I was Evelyn Thorne, 69, widow, mother, builder. I survived abandonment, exposure, and a battle for dignity. I emerged stronger, wiser, triumphant. Have you ever found the strength to rebuild your world after it was shattered and truly reclaim your power? Share your story in the comments. Your voice matters. And if this resonated, please subscribe to our channel for more journeys of resilience.